Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and peace be upon you all. Welcome. Thank you for bringing your heart. And let's get into a space of reverence where we have reverence for the learning spaces that we're in by first renewing our intentions and cashing in with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, essentially, which is what we've been talking about, right? Looking at these these actions or things that you do that may appear to you as just normal and something that you just do every week, and you take the time to reframe and renew your connection with it, where now you want to seek value with Allah in what you're doing, right? And by being present with Allah even as you're here, and seeking value with Allah in being here, so that you get rewarded and you walk away more nourished. And as I always say, the reverence that you have for a space, the intention that you have for doing any action determines what you get out of it, right? So let's take a moment to renew our intentions. The topic that I have for today is on understanding the psychology of Ramadan and how Ramadan can serve you spiritually, but also psychologically, how it can be a means to aligning you on so many levels and aligning this inner world. And Ramadan was one of the signs that really showed evidence for me, that one of the signs that helped me develop the heart over mind and ego method, and helped me really understand the power of leading from the heart. So today what I want to do is connect you to the psychology of Ramadan, how it's designed to serve you mentally, emotionally, and spiritually through the heart over mind and ego method. Okay, so I'm going to go into it a little bit and then describe. So I want to really connect you to the potential that Ramadan holds for you. I want you to go into Ramadan looking at it as, this is my alignment boot camp. Okay, because a lot of us are misaligned. A lot of us are disconnected also from the facets within us, the tools that are within us, the heart, the mind. How do we use these cognitive tools within us, right? So in my heart over mind and ego method, the H.O.M.E method, I talk about the psycho-spiritual system, right? And how there's a system within you that has these psychological and spiritual facets that we have to align and we have to treat in the way that they were designed to be treated, or else we burden them, right? So every system has a leader, right? Every system has a center. And if you look at the solar system, you will see what? You will see that the planets have to revolve around the sun. And if they revolve around anything else, there will be what? Chaos, right? So whenever there's more than one leader, more than one center, there's always chaos. So the sun is actually the only entity in space that has the strongest gravitational pull to sustain the orbit of the planets. So if the planets revolved around anything else, it would be a false leader. It would be a false center, and it would not be able to sustain them, and they would fall. They would crash. So we see this throughout, there's so many signs of this in our world and internally in our physical systems. You have the respiratory system, right? You have the center is the lung. You have the cardiovascular system. At the center of this system is the heart, right? The digestive system. At the center of the system is the stomach. And it's not enough to know the entities within these systems. You have to know the flow, right? So the psycho-spiritual system has to have a central leader, okay? And in the psycho-spiritual system, the heart has the ultimate authority over what the mind and nafs provided. The heart has to be the leader. And if you lead from any other place, you will experience misalignment. You will experience chaos. And take this as a rule. If you're not prioritizing the nourishment of your heart above all else, there will always be a sense of chaos, a sense of like, I'm not grounded, I'm not aligned. So the heart, if a true leader, will then process what the mind and the nafs give it through a God-centered lens, okay? In an effort to align itself with our higher self, with our ruh, that the soul, this part of us that is permanent, this part of us that knows its home, that's destined to go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whenever the heart is at the lead and you find yourself centering everything around it, you find yourself prioritizing it. Just today, just right now, what did we do? We set our intentions, we renewed our intentions. This is you leading from the heart. This is you saying, My heart is the priority. It's not enough that I just came here. It's not enough that I just walked here. I sat down. It's not enough that I rationally know why I'm here. I need to actually activate this heart. I need to prioritize this heart by renewing my intentions and intending for the sake of Allah to be here, right? So Ramadan shows us how powerfully the heart becomes elevated and how much our life becomes aligned when we lead from the heart and when our psycho-spiritual system is aligned appropriately. And actually, Ramadan creates this opportunity. So during Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us our potential in so many ways. In Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us the potential of our hearts. He shows us the potential of our capacity, of how much we can grow and transform. And let's start off with just the basic concept of us physically fasting, right? Fasting from food. Why is it that fasting from food creates such potential in the human being? Take some time to reflect about this. So in Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows you your potential, your ability to grow closer to Him on a level that you might not be witnessing outside of Ramadan. Let's start with that. Just why do you think that fasting becomes the foundation of you accessing your potential? Mhm.
Fasting or starving is the only way to suppress the nafs.
Okay, fasting suppresses the nafs. It's going to be related to what we talk about later. Anybody else?
It teaches us discipline.
Hmm?
Discipline.
Teaches us discipline, absolutely.
It imposes remembrance.
Hmm?
It imposes remembrance
It imposes remembrance.
all the time.
Like it kind of forces you to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, absolutely.
Things like the difficulties of the trial, so because you can't sit and hold on.
It's a difficulty, right? It's a trial. So you have to really turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help. Okay, all great answers. But here's really the foundational reason why when you physically fast from food and water, why it actually allows you to access your potential as a human being and as a spirit, above all, as a spiritual being, more than anything else. It is because of this. Fasting is the most basic desire of the human being, right? What other than food and water is more basic than that? So you have so many desires as a human being, right? Fasting is the most foundational desire because you are programmed to survive. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you to survive. And you're programmed to know that if you do not eat, if you do not drink water, you will not survive, right? So you actually cannot neglect your basic desire of food, right? For longer periods of time because your survival depends on it, right? Fasting is the most fundamental desire. Why is it that the Prophet ﷺ advises people who are not married to fast? Because if you can master taming your most basic desire as a human being, you can master any other desire. Food and water is the most basic desire. It comes before sexual desires. It comes before desire for relationships, desire for connection, desire to grow as a human being, desire to fulfill your potential, desire for even external security, other forms of security. It's the most basic desire. So, for example, you could not have a roof over your head and still survive, right? But if you don't have food or water, can you survive? No. So Allah's creating an opportunity here where you, for a certain amount of time, you're cutting yourself off from what we know to be your most basic desire, your most necessary desire to survive in this human experience. If you can master that, you can master anything else. So don't neglect this. Allah's creating an opportunity where He's showing you your potential as a spiritual being above a human being. Because remember, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. What does that mean? Who we are in our essence is spiritual. Who we are at our core is spiritual. We are a soul. When this body dies, you transcend the body. You transcend this human experience. The soul transcends it. It lives eternally, right? But guess what? Throughout the year, many of us forget this. We treat ourselves as if we are human beings having a spiritual experience rather than actually accessing who we are at our core, which is I am an elevated being. I am a spiritual being. I come from a high, this is your higher self. You come from a higher place. This physical body, it dies in this world. But the soul goes back to that higher world, right? And so when you can access that space and live from that space, you realize your potential to a whole different degree. And you can see this in Ramadan. You'll be hungry and you'll feel the pangs of hunger. And then you start reading Quran. What happens? You start doing dhikr. What happens? Does anyone experience this? What happens? When you're hungry in Ramadan and you start reading Quran or you start doing dhikr or you start focusing on your ibadah.
I feel like it shifts my focus.
Shifts your focus. Mm-hmm. Well, try to remember when you've done that in Ramadan. What has it done for you?
You forget about being hungry.
You forget about being hungry. You transcend the dunya need of hunger because your higher self is being nourished. So you overcome your lower self, you transcend the needs of this body, and you feed the higher facets within you. You're nourishing the higher facets within you. You actually realize that I have higher facets that I don't feed enough because I'm too busy feeding my lower self. I'm too busy feeding my body. I'm too busy feeding, and I don't mean just physically, I mean like feeding your nafs, like all the things that it wants you to do, right? It wants to eat immediately when it wants to eat. It wants to be soothed immediately when it's agitated, when it's uncomfortable. So when you are fasting, it's not just your physical body that is uncomfortable, it's actually your nafs too, because your nafs wants you to instantly gratify it. And this applies to hunger too. I'm hungry, feed me. Think about how even on a normal day when you're hungry, right? Uber Eats or like right away, people want, right? We're programmed to get fast food. So you're not just training your physical body, you're training this lower self and you're training yourself to go beyond it. So what are you doing ultimately in that moment? You're learning to not lead from your nafs. You're learning to not lead from this lower self. And you're learning to access higher facets within you that are much more powerful. That when you are able to access them, you function from a different place. You function from a higher place. So this is why Ramadan shows you your potential. Because if you can master fasting from your most basic desire, you can, while you are fasting and disconnecting from this most basic desire, you're accessing higher facets within you and nourishing those facets within you, Allah shows you how you're able to overcome anything. If you can master that, you can master any other desire. Because everyone has different desires, right? That are taking them away from Allah, that go against what Allah has called them to. So Allah's saying, listen, isn't food halal? Food is halal, right? But in Ramadan, between Fajr and Maghrib, it is haram. So why is Allah creating this? He's telling you, okay, food is halal, and I know you need it, but I'm going to show you how you can, if you disconnect and you can fast from something that you need, you can fast and disconnect and overcome any habit that is not halal, any habit that is actually haram all the time, right? Whether that's people are trying to overcome drinking, overcome being in haram relationships, overcome any kind of habit that goes against what Allah has taught. So Allah is creating an opportunity for you to see your potential. And remember, this is a rule. If Allah showed me I can handle disconnecting from my most basic desire, I can disconnect and overcome any desire that's haram. Do you feel that? Are you connected to that? So now when you go in this Ramadan, you are connected to, Ya Allah, show me my potential. Ya Allah, help me overcome any desire that is displeasing to you. Help me overcome any habit that is displeasing to you. You're not just, okay, I'm fasting from food, check. No, you're connected now to what Allah is doing for you in Ramadan. You're connected to the psychology of it, the spirituality of it. You're connected to how Allah's training you internally to align yourself with your fitrah. But in Ramadan, so essentially during Ramadan, Allah shows us the potential of our hearts when we deprive our bodies and our nafs from their whims and desires. So again, there's a system within you that I call the psychospiritual system in the H.O.M.E method, right? And like in any system, when one part of a system becomes weaker, what happens to other parts of the system? They overwork, they compensate, right? So in any system, when one part of a system becomes weaker, another part of the system has no choice but to step up. For example, it's known that people who have impaired sight, they have stronger hearing. Their hearing tries to compensate for their weaker sight. The opposite is also true. People who have impaired hearing tend to have stronger eyesight. So in any system, the entities within that system attempt to compensate for the deficiencies of that system. And this is why I had to define our inner facets as a system of its own, because I had a background in biology and I loved studying anatomy, but I noticed the big drastic difference, right? Like in anatomy, we prioritize understanding the different systems. We understand the systems, the entities, and the flow of each system. For example, for your digestive system to work, right? There's a flow in which food is digested. And it's not enough that I know there's a stomach, a large intestine, a small intestine. I have to know the flow. So this is what led me to developing the heart over mind and ego method, because I was like, how come we don't look at our inner world, our psychological and spiritual facets as a system of its own? So we not only understand the entities, but we understand the flow, because everything has a flow. And if you don't treat it as such, there will be chaos. So in any system, the entities within that system attempt to compensate for the deficiencies of other entities. This is because the entities within a system are designed to fulfill a purpose, which is to keep the system functioning. This is just the nature of things, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created everything in harmony. When there is one weak entity, there's balance, subhanAllah. You see this in the ecosystem, you see this in even so many systems in our world outside of our physical systems, right? So they are programmed, all the entities are programmed to maintain equilibrium. But the key is that the system has to be led by the right leader. So Ramadan is a time in which the mind and the nafs make way for the heart to lead again and take back its rightful position as leader within your being. How does this happen? Ramadan is a 30-day training camp. I was going to say 29, 30, but Ramadan is a 30-day training camp that Allah created to realign our inner world. And He gives us this training camp every year. And every week He gives you Jummah. He gives you Friday. Right? So subhanAllah, you'll notice throughout the year, there's small ways in which Allah allows us to recalibrate, realign, but then there's big ways. Ramadan is the huge one in the middle of the year that He gives you to realign yourself. So in Ramadan, Allah, gave us this month to realign our inner world every year, recalibrate our inner compass, and redirect it back towards Him. Okay. Ramadan teaches us to prioritize our higher self, which I identify my method as our ruh, our soul, right? This higher facet within us, and not be led by our lower self, our nafs or egos. So in Ramadan, we fast. So how does this happen, this alignment happen? In Ramadan, we fast, depriving the physical body, right? We deprive our physical body of food from Fajr to Maghrib. During this time, we are also taught that not only food or fulfilling other haram desires or even sexual desires, right, can break our fast for the married person, But any action that does not serve your ruh can also break your fast. For example, backbiting. Right? This is why people, what happens in Ramadan, you become so much more sensitive to anything that could break your fast. So what you're doing ultimately is you're not only depriving your physical body because you're making the body weaker, but you're also making the nafs weaker because you keep saying no to it. No, we're not. I'm not going to backbite. I don't want to break my fast. No, I'm not going to do this. Let's say you do a particular sin outside of Ramadan. In Ramadan, people are more conscious. No, I'm not going to. I don't want it to break my fast. Right. So you're constantly weakening the nafs. But what you're also doing is you're treating the mind the way that it was designed to be treated, which is that it's not the lead, it is the servant of the heart. So in the method, I say that the mind is the servant of the heart, right? Meaning what? I don't lead from here. This is not going to take me in every direction it wants to go. Ultimately, this is meant to serve this. So how do we use this to serve this? We connect with what is right. We're using it now in because how do you utilize the mind, period? It's through your senses, right? What you watch, what you hear, what you say, through your five senses, right? Everything that you connect to through your senses is information that your mind is absorbing, processing, whether you like it or not. It's going to process, interpret, it's going to do its job, right? It's obeying Allah's command. And a lot of us are just led by that. We're not even thinking about what am I exposing it to. We're not intentional about what am I hearing, what am I listening to, what am I looking at. And then in Ramadan comes and you're like, you become like a guard over your mind. You become, now you are leading with the heart and guarding over the mind. So you're saying, no, I want to only listen to what serves my heart. I want to only watch what serves my heart. I want to only engage in conversations that serve my heart. So you see the sensitivity now to where you're directing the mind. So the mind is no longer the lead. What is it doing? It's serving the heart. So now what you have done, you stop leading from your body, you stop leading from your nafs, you stop leading from your mind. So the heart has no choice but to step up and take back its rightful position of leader. You made way for it. And this is exactly what happens in Ramadan. Why people start to feel this iman, why people start to feel this peace, why people don't want Ramadan to end. They experience the aligning power of leading from the heart and giving the heart the position that Allah wanted it to have, where you prioritize it, where you're not just led by every whim. You feel a centering in Ramadan. People weep and weep when Ramadan is coming to an end, as if, they experience something you never experienced all year, because it shows you the aligning power of your inner world and how Allah designed you to center your life around Him and to prioritize this heart that you have to bring back to Allah. Salim, qalbin salim, right? A sound heart, a whole heart. So in Ramadan, we fast and we deprive ourselves of all these desires, and we're more aware of what does not serve our ruh and its beautiful return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you're just more sensitive to anything that could put your fasting at risk. So as Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he taught us, whoever does not give up false speech and act in accordance with it, whoever does not give up false speech and acting in accordance with it, and ignorant conduct, Allah has no need of him giving up his food and drink. So whoever is fasting and is engaging in false speech or any conduct or behavior that basically is not pleasing to Allah, yani Allah has no, like, you might as well not fast, basically. But of course, you don't like take this as, if you backbit by accident or something, that you should break your fast. No, but this hadith is just showing you that, that the Prophet ﷺ is saying Allah has no need of him giving up his food and drink. You're here giving up your food and drink, your most basic of desires, but then you can't tame secondary or third desires. You can't tame your nafs in other areas, So if you're here, you are having the power to say no to your most basic desire, and you can't say no to other desires. Yarhamakallah. Right? It doesn't make sense, right? So don't waste your fast, basically. That you're doing the hard work of disconnecting from your most basic desire. Remember that you have the ability and the power to say no to other desires. Okay? The Prophet ﷺ, he also said, fasting does not just mean giving up food and drink, rather, fasting also means giving up idle and obscene talk. It's interesting that there's an emphasis here on leaving idle and obscene talk, right? That's why, because this is also how you're exposing your mind and exposing your inner world to, right? If you're constantly engaging, the conversations you have such a huge impact on your heart, by the way. And if you are engaged in idle talk and you're aware of your inner world and you're connected to the to shifts of your heart, you will notice your heart becoming constricted when you're around talk that is either you're backbiting someone or you're saying something haram or you're talking about things that are displeasing to Allah. You will feel it. You should feel the effects of it. Or you walk away feeling like, what did I get out of that conversation? Best feeling is having conversations that you walk away nourished, you walk away feeling closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you walk away, feeling like you didn't disobey him. So the fasting of Ramadan is not solely a fasting of the physical body. It is a holistic fast that includes the fasting of our eyes, the fasting of our ears, the fasting of our tongues, the fasting of our minds, the fasting of our egos. So you're fasting, you're allowing all these faculties within you to fast, not just your stomach. As the physical body fasts from food, the eyes fast from looking at anything that does not serve the heart, the ears fast from hearing anything that does not nourish the heart, the tongue fasts from saying anything that can impact one's own heart and the heart of others, because you impact other people's hearts as well. When you use your tongue to speak of things that are not right, you're also hurting the hearts of others. And a lot of people are disconnected from that. The mind fasts from absorbing information from our world that doesn't serve its leader, the heart. And finally, the nafs, or the ego. It fasts from aimlessly following its desires, impulses, and from seeking immediate gratification. So a lot of times we think we're just fasting from our physical, or we're just having a fast of the physical body. We think Ramadan is just the fasting of the physical body. But did you see all these things, all these other facets within you that are fasting in Ramadan? So it's a holistic fast. With every no that you say to your nafs when it wants food, I'm so sorry, I can't figure this out. I put do not disturb, so I don't know. Let me make sure from my phone then. Okay. So with every no that we say to our lower self, with every no that we say to our nafs or ego, when it wants food, when it wants to follow a desire, when it wants to speak about things that are not beneficial, when it wants to feel superior to others by backbiting, because a lot of times people backbite to feel superior, when it wants to affirm its own self-importance, look at me, I'm important, right? You're shushing your nafs in so many ways, by the way. Or when it wants immediate comfort and pleasure, we are putting it in its rightful place. We're saying, shh, no. Know your place, right? In those moments when we say no to the nafs, we are saying, you're not the lead of me, and I cannot be led by you. And by the way, we should not wait till Ramadan to start doing that. Start from now. Start reminding your nafs of its place, so that in Ramadan, you're not spending the first half of Ramadan trying to make it understand its place, right? So with every no that you say to your nafs, it falls back. It becomes weaker. It loses a bit of its inflation, because the nafs loves to be inflated, right? It loves to be the lead of you. And with every no, it becomes deprived. You're starving it. It becomes deprived of its fuel. At the same time, now I'm explaining the psychology of it right now. At the same time, what's happening? We're much more conscious of what we expose our senses to, allowing our brain to collect information that is beneficial and necessary for the heart's growth. And then we utilize the mind, as I said, to serve our heart. So the heart is no longer the servant, falling behind, subservient to our minds and egos. And then you realize something really powerful, that this heart is the strongest tool we have to connect to our Creator. And so we utilize all the other facets and tools to strengthen this most noble part of our being. This is why you feel this alignment. And this is the part of us we want so badly to renew and transform during Ramadan. We realize, wow, here I was throughout the year aligning this and aligning that and trying to, feed my mind. People are obsessed with storing information in their mind. They think that growth and transformation has to do with how much they know. And in Ramadan, you realize the opposite. It's not about how much I know. It's about how much my heart is connected to, and actually affects or motivates my limbs to move and affects my behaviors. Because look at what I'm doing. I'm praying more. I'm doing more dhikr. Because your actions also give you a return, right? So it's not just, people think, oh, I have to feel a certain way to do. But in Ramadan, you see, the more I do these things, the more they give me a return. So you engage in the actions that serve your higher self, you find a return. More energy, more light, more nourishment, more peace. You feel, wow, I didn't think I needed all this. Like, I thought I needed all this noise. I thought I needed all of this to feel centered. But subhanAllah, in Ramadan, you realize I don't need much. I don't need a lot of food. I don't need a lot of noise around me. I don't need all the stuff I'm listening to. I don't need all this idle talk. I don't need to watch all these shows. And you just realize, wow, like, I'm at peace and I'm so centered just because I was doing these things. And it's amazing. And I think this is one of the biggest realizations is when you declutter the noise and your main priority is treating this heart the way it was designed, you realize how much you burden yourself, how much you add clutter to your life, how much you carry what Allah did not ask you to carry, how much you're consuming more than you need to consume, and how much a lot of what you consume is actually destructive to you. Just cut off if let's say you're used to listening to music every day, cut it off for a month. You are not going to want to go back to listening to music every day. It's the same concept. Your soul gets nourished in a way from now. So remember I said that tazkiyah, there's takhliya and tahliya, right? There's removal and beautification. So whatever habit you want to fix in life, you can't just remove it from your life. You have to be beautifying your life. So let's take music for instance, right? You want to remove music from your life. Let's say you did that, you removed it. Now you have to replace it. You have to add what? Quran. You have to add dhikr. You have to add knowledge that's beneficial. That is going to nourish you in a way that music never did. And once you experience that sweetness, you're like, why was I listening to that? When you go back, you're not going to feel right. Your heart got a taste of what is pure and tayyib, and you're giving it now this, and you're like, something is off here. When I was little, I remember asking my mother, is music haram, right? And, she could have easily said, music is haram, right? She could have said, stay away from it, music is haram. You know what she said to me? May Allah bless her and bless all our mothers. She said, Marwa, you have two hearts. I'm sorry. It's the opposite. She said, Marwa, you have one heart. You either fill it with Allah. Sorry, I'm going to laugh about this. Oh my goodness. Okay, so she said, Marwa, you have one heart. You either fill it with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or you fill it with music. So what that did for me is that it made me aware that I have this heart that I'm responsible for filling with the right things, right? And what that did too is make me more attuned to how I feel when I fill my heart with Quran, or how I feel when I connect my heart to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how I feel when I'm listening to music. So I started to notice the difference, right? And so I think sometimes we fixate so much on, is it haram or is it halal, rather than, okay, let's say you do have concerns or a doubt about a certain action in your life. Let's say you're not getting one opinion, right? It's time to consult your heart, as the Prophet ﷺ said, and actually connect to what happens to your heart when you're doing that action. Because there are going to be things, guys, that are not going to be so clear cut. And Allah, I believe there's wisdom in this. Yes, there are foundational things where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said clearly, no dispute about it, right? Haram, halal. There's no dispute that alcohol is haram, right? There's no dispute that sexual relations outside of marriage is haram. There's no dispute, right? But there are things you're going to come across, you're like, oh, I wonder if this is haram. I wonder if this is good for me. And you're not going to get a solid yes or no. This is when you have to istashir qalbak, right? You have to really consult your heart. what happens to my heart when I am doing this? Do I walk away from this feeling nourished, feeling closer to Allah? Or does it take my heart away from Allah? Right? So this is really important to assess. And this is what you should start thinking about now. Like, so whenever you cut something off and you fill at the same time, you have your takhliya and you have your tahliya, you're removing, but you're beautifying. Then you realize if you ever go back to that thing, you feel a big difference. But if you remove without beautifying, let's say you remove music, but you're not adding into your life dhikr and nourishment and the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and knowledge, and you're connecting to good company, righteous company, that's also very important. Being in spaces like this where you are around people who are seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is so beautiful. If you're not beautifying into your life, you're most likely going to go back to that thing that you left, right? We talked about this last week. So where did I leave off? So during Ramadan, we become so deeply aware of how we play a role in our own malnourishment, right? And destruction. We realize how much we play a role in the destruction of our own heart as well. And Allah shows us the truth of ourselves, ultimately. It is the best time to recognize how we play a role in our own struggles and our own heart's malnourishment and its lack of freedom. A lot of people feel like imprisoned within them, right? And you realize we're trapping the heart from doing what it was designed to do. So Ramadan is a time when we try to keep our egos in check, and as a result, our hearts become freer. And as we deprive our stomachs from having its full, our hearts become fuller. And when the heart becomes nourished, everything else benefits from its nourishment. And that includes the rest of our being, by the way. The Prophet ﷺ, he told us, right? There's a part within you that if it is rectified, everything else is rectified. And that is what? Your heart. So this heart, if it's not rectified, the rest of your being is rectified. Even if it's not rectified, the rest of your being is not rectified. Even your physical body struggles as well. And you see this when sometimes people go to the doctor and there's no reason for any of their physical symptoms or what they're feeling. There's no reason. And a lot of people don't realize that your psychological well-being and your spiritual well-being also affects your physical well-being. So everything is connected. And so that's why we should always take a holistic approach. We're working on all the facets within us. We're not just working on our physical health and neglecting, our spiritual health or psychological health. And you find that everything else outside of you also starts to be aligned, such as our relationships, our interactions. You find that there's like an order that comes together. Not to say that all of your problems are going to be fixed, but there's a difference between your problems not being fixed and you feel like everything is out of order. And there's a difference between that and feeling like, okay, not everything is fixed, but I feel like there's a sense of order, right? I feel like things are becoming more settled or manageable, right? Not as overwhelming. That's what we want. So this is the psychological, the social, the spiritual power of Ramadan. It facilitates a process for us to reorient ourselves and our inner world towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to recognize the power of our own hearts, to be connected to our greater spiritual potential, our higher potential. And as a result, so many other factors, become positively impacted as well. So this is something that we always have to keep in mind. So just remember the potential it holds for you. Start thinking about how you want this Ramadan to be a means for you to access your potential, and think about it from now. Don't think about it when it starts. Really think about, okay, what are the habits that I've been engaged in that I really want this Ramadan to be a means to me getting rid of those habits. Because here Allah's showing me that if I can tame my most basic desire, I can tame anything else. I'll pause here and take questions. Yeah.
So I have maybe somewhat of a comment. Last question.
Mhm.
So I've noticed that when I was fasting during last Ramadan, I went to a doctor,
Okay.
And I got my heart rate checked, and the heart rate was like perfect.
Nice.
Like, and it wasn't normally like that in other times
Okay.
during the year.
Subhanallah.
So that really resonated with me. Like,
Mhm.
my heart rate was just like perfect. Like,
Wow.
we
Subhanallah.
were just like, wow, the doctors were amazed. And just wanted to, I guess, affirm that statement you made.
Yeah.
During Ramadan while fasting, my heart rate was absolutely perfect.
Subhanallah.
I guess what I do want to ask you more about, just maybe expand a little bit more on, I think we're talking about music, and we're talking about, I like the aspect of fiqh,
Hmm.
right, versus the aspect of spiritual attainment, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever you call it. Some people call it Sufism, something like that. But like, have you ever heard of the term called a muraqabah?
Of course. Yeah. We've taught about it here before too as well. Yeah.
Okay, and I think I was curious, like, how would you go about practicing muraqabah more frequently during Ramadan?
Yeah, so muraqabah is watchfulness over yourself, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His name is Ar-Raqib. He is the watchful. He's the most watchful, right? So muraqabah is what I call a higher level of mindfulness, where mindfulness, you're being a witness to what's going on within you without judgment. But muraqabah is as you are watchful over yourself, you are connected to the fact that Allah is watchful over you. So Ramadan literally creates this enhanced or refined taqwa. What is taqwa? You're conscious of Allah. So you're conscious of Allah as ar-Raqib over you. That's essentially what taqwa is. You are so sensitive to Allah being the watchful over you. So it's not enough that I'm watchful over myself. No, as I'm watchful over myself, I know that Allah is most watchful over me and the shifts of my heart and my mind and my thoughts and my emotions and everything. So Ramadan creates a process for people to increase their taqwa. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, right? That Ramadan is a means to people becoming more conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having more taqwa. So so yeah, that's how I would say in Ramadan, it creates a process where you just, as you're more conscious of what you're exposing yourself to, as you're more conscious of how you are fasting, not just I'm fasting from physical food, I'm fasting, no, I want to fast from anything that displeases Allah. You're increasing your muraqabah because now you're conscious of Allah being watchful over you. But then you're also conscious of how you channel your thoughts. You're more sensitive to how you channel your emotions, right? Maybe before Ramadan, people channel their emotions to haram directions, right? Or maybe they soothe themselves in ways that are destructive. No, no, no. Now I want to soothe myself in a way that is pleasing to Allah. Let me sit and do dhikr. Let me sit and read Quran, right? Yeah. Any other questions?
Another question, just to add on to what you said. There is Arabic saying that like لا يجتمع إنسان في قلب,
Yes.
which means you can love two opposite things at once.
Yeah. Yeah. Also in the Quran, right? Allah tells us, let me get actually the exact verse. I just don't want to say it wrong, but there's a verse that where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said He did not create two hearts within Allah has not placed two hearts inside any man. And I was thinking about that when I was saying my mom's because I was just listening to this surah recently actually. It's in Surah Al-Ahzab. Hold on, let's get it. Just make sure I have it right. Yeah, Surah Al-Ahzab. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Ahzab, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, ما جعل الله لرجل من قلبين في جوفه. SubhanAllah. Allah does not place two hearts in any person's chest. So this is just something to keep in mind, right? That like Allah did not give you two hearts. And every heart has to have like its highest value. You can't have two lords. You can't have, just as your system can only have one central point, the heart can only have one thing that is its highest value. You can't have two things that are highest value. Even in psychology, we say everyone has a lord because everyone has something that they deem their highest value. You cannot give anything else the same position and value that you give to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your heart. And you don't have two hearts, as Allah says. Right? So again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَا جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لِرَجُلٍ مِّن قَلْبَيْنِ فِي جَوْفِهِ. Allah does not place two hearts in any person's chest. I love this.
Okay, so I have a question on this topic because I know that, like, obviously, it's like you fill your heart with love for Allah, and that's the primary. But how do you reconcile with like the realities of like the love of things we have in this world, right? So like,
Yeah.
there's like people and our families,
Of course.
and our partners, and whatever it is. And so sometimes when this topic comes up, I like it's like conceptually I fully understand that, but then it's like when you're sometimes met with like an example of like God forbid if someone loses their child
Mhm.
and like there's someone says something like, oh, you love that child too much more than like sometimes people will say things like that which are not that appropriate, but how do
Usually
you,
by people who have not lost a child.
pardon?
Usually by people who have not lost a child.
Yeah, and so it's something I just wonder, like, how do you reconcile some of those things of like the love that is natural of things,
Yeah.
people in this world, with while also knowing that like ultimately your heart is only supposed to be filled with love for all.
No. If you notice, I said, what is your highest value? I didn't say that you don't have other values. You see the difference? I think people think that like you have to have one thing. It's like all or nothing, one love, one. No. Like the dunya, and someone asked me last week about the dunya versus the akhirah. Is it supposed to that you neglect the dunya completely if your priority is the akhirah? And I said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you in the Quran, do not forget your share of the world. Do not forget your share of the dunya. But what does it mean then to prioritize the akhirah? Is that the dunya, the akhirah, I care about it much more than I care about the dunya. My heart's attachment is more to the akhirah than anything else. So with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that you understand that you don't give anything the same value as Allah. It's not to say that you don't value anything else. Of course you value. You have love. Allah created love, right? He created love as a nourishment for you. You loving yourself. Okay, so you loving yourself gives you nourishment in the right way. If you love yourself in a way that's aligned with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it nourishes you. You loving others and being loved by others is a nourishment. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was asked about Khadija radiallahu anha, he said, I was nourished by her love. So love is designed to nourish you. But then you love Allah, the love of Allah in your life nourishes you above anything else. So it's not that you're choosing, oh, I only love Allah. No, Allah created love. He wants you to love. Love is a gift for you in this world, but you put it in its place. Are you not allowed to like food? Yes, you're allowed to like food. You're allowed to enjoy food. But does that interfere with your ibadah? No, right? Does your love of those things interfere with you walking towards Allah? No. When you are about to do something, do you do it out of love for the people or do you do it out of love for Allah? So the more you can make decisions that are rooted in your love for Allah above anything else, that's when you know you're on the right track. So it's not that you're just understanding that shirk, associating partners with Allah, is that you don't give anything the same value as Allah. Not people in your life, not your wealth, not your children. This is the ayah in the Quran. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about us coming back to Him on the day of judgment, what does He say? No wealth, no children will benefit a person except one who brings back to Allah what? Qalbin salim. A sound heart, a whole heart. What does that mean? It's a heart that understands who its highest value is, who its greatest concern is, who its Rabb is. It does not have two Rabbs, no, because that's impossible. So it's that you're constantly thinking, is Allah my priority? Let's say you're about to make a decision, right? And you're doing it out of love, let's say for your child or your spouse or a loved one. You prioritizing Allah, saying, what is my intention? Is this pleasing to Allah? Now, does it mean, now imagine that actually the fact that you can love so deeply is what makes you loving Allah and prioritizing Allah so rewarding. Because if you didn't have that in you to love, then where's the test? Like the angels don't know anything else other than loving Allah. They don't know anything sweeter than worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're not like us. Allah did not give them a nafs. But you know what it is to love. So imagine in those moments that you transcend that and you still do what is right for Allah despite your love for that person, right? So it's just putting things in its place. Wallahi, our deen is about balance. And it's just about understanding where things are in its place and realize and always assessing if I'm committing shirk. Like meaning like giving anything the same level, same value that only Allah deserves. Because only Allah is deserving of that space in our heart. Right? As I answer your question?
Yeah, I think this is the second part because it's not so much I was saying like only or choosing, but
Yeah.
it's that piece of like how do you know when you're giving something too much?
Yeah.
You know, like
And it's just assessing like, is my love keeping me away from Allah? That's how, like, if your love is getting to a point, because you can love something too much, right? Even love has balance. Umar ibn Khattab, radiallahu anhu, he talked about this. Do not love like too much because that person can be your like your I don't have the exact phrase, but he was saying like don't love so much that because one day that person could be your enemy, and don't hate too much because that person could be your friend, right? So always everything in our deen is about tawazun, balance. So one of the signs you know is the love for this person taking me away from Allah? That's one of the signs. So you always look at what's the outcome, what's the actions. Yeah, I think, and then we have to stop.
So one thing that I've personally had to work on is talking a lot. I went to school and I paid for myself into college, working a sales job. So I had to talk. I had to be a person who was a person with a gift of the gab, perhaps. And nowadays, I'm trying to practice speaking less. And that's my intention for Ramadan is to make sure that I'm not speaking so much.
Mhm.
Um, and I guess I just want to ask you, like, I personally just ask myself, is what I'm having to say, is this urgent? I'm asking myself, hey, is what I'm having to say, is this urgent? But I want to ask you, like, how can I connect this epiphany or this realization that I'm trying to go on towards? How can I connect this with Ramadan and subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
I think it's just asking is what I'm about to say good for my heart and the hearts of others. That's a good question because Allah wants you to only to speak when it's beneficial, right? Not just speak idly or in a way that does not serve. So it's just really about your intention for speaking. And I think that's something that it's really important to pause and assess why am I saying this? Is it just because I love the sound of my voice? Is it because I just want to make my word in? I want to have the last word? Is it because I want to show what I know? These are all ego driven things, right? But if it's from a place of like, no, this is beneficial and this is going to benefit my heart, and this is going to benefit maybe the heart in front of me, then that's how you know. All right, we will. Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry. Actually, you had your. I remembered now. She had her hand up before.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
To your point about talking, it made me think about a verse in the Quran.
Mhm.
And I searched it up, and it's from Surah. Actually, I don't know, Surah Ibrahim.
Mhm.
And it says, "Do you not see how Allah compares a good word to a good tree?
Mhm.
Its root is firm, and its branches reach the sky, always yielding its fruit in every season by the will of its Lord. This is how Allah sets forth parables for the people, so perhaps they will be mindful." And then there is the parable of an evil word, and that's of an evil tree, uprooted from the earth and having no stability.
Mhm.
So I think like it makes me think about how much power, like you said,
Mhm.
better words have.
Mhm.
But then also we have like the power of bringing good, and our good
Yeah.
words have that much impact. So
It's like a charity, right? And it's like the words you choose is ibadah in essence, and it either roots you or it makes you destabilized, like the tree. It's either going to make you rooted and grounded, and people's words destroy them at times. They uproot them and they make them destabilized. And a lot of people don't think about that, the words that they say and how they impact their own hearts and not just the hearts of others. Or they think, oh, it's good for other people's hearts, but it's not good. Like they're not evaluating if it's good for theirs. Yeah. Last question, and then we have to wrap up.
So for coping solution, I know certain emotions are definitely bad for you, like anger and all that. But what about like annoyance and irritation? Like they do also take a lot of energy, but would you say they are like bad emotions? And for instance, I know what makes me annoyed and irritated, but other people don't. So how do I, once I'm alive, not like spend 1,000 years like just being like,
That's a whole different discussion, but like, I mean, I'll just say this because of time. I think that when it comes to your emotions, first of all, is all anger bad? No. Anger for the sake of Allah is good. The Prophet ﷺ, he got angry, but for the sake of Allah, right? So you always have to ask about where's the emotion coming from? And is it coming from my nafs, which like seeks importance or seeks this and that, all these maybe things that are not healthy? Or is it coming from a heart that seeks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So it's not about like necessarily labeling them as bad, it's just learning from them and assessing where they're coming from and accessing higher parts of you so that you can overcome, what you're seeking from that. So for example, you're annoyed, maybe that's an opportunity for you to tame your own nafs, right? And to say like, okay, I have to sit with this. But if it's like a pattern of behavior where you feel like maybe it's with one person and this person keeps, let's say, overstepping their boundaries with you, then you have to assess, is it worth me speaking up about it? Is it good for me? Is it good for them? So it really depends on the context, but labeling things as just good and bad without really understanding where they're coming from is not helpful. Yeah. All right. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.